I wanted to introduce the Hakim in a slightly abnormal way, that you have some of the detailed information on the flyer about what all those abbreviations mean, that you can ask him later, that after his name, that he is an extremely well-trained and distinguished that master and practitioner of Unani Tibb and other that sciences that pertain to health. And I would prefer to mention how we met and how I was exposed to him. And that essentially that story actually roots back to one of the co-founders of Zaytuna College, Hakim Salim, that having himself been exposed to this great sophisticated tradition of medicine, which is known in Arabic as Tibb, and you could translate that in a number of different ways, in a slightly idiomatic way in English as natural medicine. And that this is important because, like so many other quote-unquote traditional sciences, and what we mean by that is not just a thing from the past, but that sciences that have been passed on generation after generation and that have been worked and reworked and contributed to. And this was part and parcel of the Muslim world. And from the blessing of Allah, that although that this is that not widespread, and what I mean by widespread, if we include all of the Muslim countries and that wherever Muslims live as minorities, however, that there still are links in this tradition that have learned from masters who have learned from masters who have learned from masters that go back into some of the first books that were written that in this science. And that having grown up and embraced Islam here, that in the Bay Area and being exposed very quickly to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and the teachings that were really the root that led to this beautiful institution that we all support and love, is that this was one of the things that we grew up hearing, this idea of the temperaments, this idea of a very sophisticated tradition of medicine. And that it wasn't until I met someone like Hakim Salim Khan that I was able to move beyond some of the generalities to some of the specifics. That to learn from a living master of this tradition, and that as is the case with any master that you live, that they could take what would be the most boring of all subjects and bring it to life. It was life-changing, to say the least, at a number of different levels. There's a practical dimension to that, but then there's a theoretical dimension to that. Just to be exposed to this tradition, and that is so relevant to our everyday lives. And that this is really the impetus behind this tour and this visit of Hakim Salim, is to expose us to this great tradition in relation to its theoretical dimension and its practical dimension, and that it is very clear in my mind that this is of great benefit, and that people can really, if they embrace these principles, that it could really heal that much of the problems that we have at an individual level, community level, and then at the level of the nations in which we live.